So Round was a wonderful book project with Barbara Baker. We had poems and photographs of about 12 countries in Asia. It started in mainland China and finished in Hong Kong, I think, or maybe started in Hong Kong and finished in mainland China, one or the other. We were very lucky that Asia 2000 accepted the proposal to publish it. And at that time, Hong Kong Arts Development Council was very generous with their funding and supplied us with the money to construct a beautiful exhibition that was in the rotunda of the Exchange Square, which was important because it's a round space for the book Around Asia. Asia 2000 at that time was a rather active publishing company, and they were very supportive to put that book together. Beautiful printing, beautiful design work, and it actually won an international award in Seattle. So we're very grateful that that project happened. I think it was through Barbara Baker, who somehow knew Michael Morrow. Michael was active in the literary world, you know, in the 80s, 90s, 2000. I'm not sure when he left Hong Kong, frankly, but in the 90s, certainly he was active, and he would be participating in the literary festivals, the Hong Kong International Literary Festival in particular. So he was a figure. Yeah, Six Finger Press was a wonderful collaboration. And I think for me, it was important as a way to bridge the Chinese-speaking world and the English-speaking world, or the creative worlds here in Hong Kong. There sometimes was a lot of separation between, you know, English language books and Chinese language books, different bookstores, different circles, and it was just a way to try to bring the worlds a bit closer together. So we not only published books, but we also put together different events where we would have writers and readers coming together and reading in Cantonese, sometimes Mandarin, English. Yeah, so I think it was about 5 years maybe that we were set up and published, I think, 4 books. I can't even remember. Yeah, but sorry, kind of a special interest in poetry. Well, the 3 people who were instrumental in founding Six Finger Press were Zheng Danyi, the poet, Lo Hui, who is a translator, academic, born in mainland China, educated in the US and Canada, and now living in New Zealand, and myself. And so, yes, Zheng Danyi was the kind of link between the 3 of us. Lo Hui had done the translations, Zheng Danyi did the writing, and I kind of took care of the overall coordination of the publishing and also organizing a tour. So Danyi and I traveled to the US and Canada and England, and Danyi went on to Berlin to read from the book and introduce the book mostly to a kind of university settings. Yeah, it was a nice project, and it was called Six Finger as like the pen that you write with becomes your 6 finger, kind of your creative tool. So that was our little story behind the name. Yeah. Well, for Six Finger Press, it really was a focus on poetry. So it was kind of people who love language, who love that kind of heightened use of language, which is what poetry is all about. And but we also, as I said, we also did many events. So we were quite instrumental in founding the Independent Publishers of Hong Kong, which was a group of publishers, including MCCM Creation, Blacksmith Books, and Rich, and a couple of others I can't quite recall right now, but that was a little group of publishers who got together and put on events together, sharing resources, and making some waves, making some noise in the community. Yeah, so it wasn't just about crossing cultures and crossing language, but also just making a kind of community of readers and writers here in Hong Kong and a little bit beyond Hong Kong. So Independent Publishers of Hong Kong, or IPHK, it really was a relaxed entity. So I think when I know Hong Kong has 7-8 million people now ish, but it's still a small community, especially when you talk about the creative community. And so the kind of members of Independent Publishers of Hong Kong were really people we knew, people we worked with, people we connected with, people who were producing books that we had some kind of contact with. So they were a mixture of English language and Chinese language publications, and but it really was just kind of our kind of circles of contact. Some of us had been published. Like I've had my work, my personal writing published by Haven Books, for instance, and also by MCCM Creations. So it's kind of who we knew and people we knew we could kind of work with, and also people who probably weren't publishing. I don't want to say we weren't publishing to make money, but it wasn't necessarily our main goal to be a commercially successful thing. We were probably more involved with making the best book we could and probably putting in way too much of our own personal resources to make those books. So that is the kind of spirit of, making a quality book, and often with support from either Hong Kong Arts Development Council or some other kind of supporting body that would help with the funding of the printing normally. For Delicate Access, that's my personal collection. I think it was 2004. So that was a fully bilingual book. And it was kind of, I think 7 different chapters, 7 different bodies of work, really, that were put together into one collection. So Hong Kong stories, poems. Another body was poems around Asia. Another chapter were love poems. Another chapter were very spontaneous prose poems, and that also had an exhibition that launched the book. And so it was more than just a book in your hands, but it was something you could experience in the exhibition that was at the Fringe Club. For Six Finger Press, most of our books were poetry and bilingual, and the kind of cause behind the book was really the bilingual nature, which is not that common, or it wasn't that common at the time. It's probably a bit more common now. just a way to reflect the bicultural nature of Hong Kong, the two main languages. Obviously, there are more than two here. But in terms of independent publishers of Hong Kong, I saw it more as building the presence of publishers in the community. It wasn't necessarily that we were publishing together. It was that we were creating events and creating opportunities for each other and for the publishing world. So because we could pool our resources together, for instance, we had an event at the Hong Kong Book Fair, which would have been very hard for one publisher to do on its own. So, but if we could have more, we could pay for the fees, do the coordination work together, and so sharing the workload to create something better together. That's how I saw it. It wasn't necessarily the actual book creating. It was more about the community creating, shall we say. Yeah, that's how I saw it. Mm. So my relationship with MCCM started as an editor, and I felt it was just really happy, joyous work to be doing, and it was work that I did on the side. I had a full-time job at Oxfam doing communications work and also education work there, and I honestly don't remember how I came to know Mary Chan at MCCM, but probably just because I'm a writer and creator, and again, Hong Kong's a small place, so we came to know each other. But yes, I've probably edited 50, 60, 70 books. I really don't know since. And now that I live in New Zealand, I still am doing books with her. A recent one is by Benny Chia from the Fringe Club. The John Fung book was lovely to do. Nathan Road, Hung Jai Suk Suk's poetry books, which was lovely. And one of my favorite, for some reason, was, I don't know if if this book is out in circulation much, but it was called Forest Bus. It was a children's book. It was written by a Japanese author. So I think the author translated it into Chinese from Japanese. I'm not sure if the original was in Japanese or if the writer was completely fluent to be writing it in Chinese. But I did the editing of the English translation, but really worked it to such a way that you wouldn't be able to feel that it was a translation. And it's just a lovely story. And one of my best friends here in Hong Kong bought that book without knowing my involvement in the book. And he mentioned that book, that it's one of his favorite books. And I said, oh, that's so nice to hear, because I helped write the English version, but it's a powerful story of these animals who go into the forest and on this bus, and they have some mission. I can't remember what the mission is, but it's just a lovely, quirky story in the middle of the night that all of this happens. But there are many, many stories, many, many books. Grandpa, Grandma Cook was a lovely story that Michael Wolff did the photography for, and Yung Ang did the overall editing and visualizing. Really just, but I really felt privileged to be able to kind of have, an early look at all of these books coming out. And it's just a way to, I desperately miss Hong Kong. I left Hong Kong 12 years ago, but because I keep in touch with these new books that are being created, I feel like I'm still connected, and even when I lived here, I felt very privileged to be able to have this early access to these books that would later be coming out to the public, and having that chance to work on it. I did it for a very modest payment, and sometimes donated services. It was just a beautiful thing to be doing, to be part of creating these books, creating these stories, and I just was very happy to be involved. So 50 Stories, 50 Images was literally published a few days before I left Hong Kong in 2012. And it was my kind of farewell. It was my love story to Hong Kong. I called it, on the back of the book, I think I wrote, it's about the poetry, poverty, and generosity of Hong Kong. I came here in 1988. I came here with a Chinese man. We were married at the time. And he was born here, but we met in the US, where we were both studying at university. I don't know, Hong Kong has become just part of my body. It really has. I'm just this morning when I was walking around and sitting in a cha chan teng having breakfast, it just feels so at home for me. I think my love for this place is really kind of unconditional. Obviously, it's changed a lot recently, and it's another place, it's another time, and all of that. But the heart and the soul and my connection to Hong Kong will never end, I don't think. So 50 Stories, 50 Images was a very kind of anecdotal kind of book of experiences that had happened over the 25 years. From my first home was in Chunwan, and I experienced a suicide, a woman jumping from a building of a residential tower there, to many other beautiful stories and kind stories. And it's just I consider books as, as a way to collect experience, and to keep it in one place. So, it's all, it has its own kind of life and entity. And if you don't make that book or exhibition or whatever your art form is, it's just this kind of loose, disparate thing. And so it felt important to me to make that record, and as a kind of gift to Hong Kong that really welcomed me. And I wanted to thank Hong Kong for that. And so MCCM, we produced that together. I did contribute towards some of the costs of the book to make it happen, which is quite the norm these days. And a lot of publications from independent publishers do work that way. And I was very happy to contribute some of the costs. So we created that together, and it was a wonderful project. So I'd like to share this one piece from the book, Town, and it's kind of about the transition from Hong Kong to rural New Zealand. So it's called Advice for a Small Country. Plant some grass, a friend says, before I come to this country. Plant 4 different kinds in a small plot. If you watch them grow, you are lonely. Drink tea, writes a poet 1,000 years ago. The first cup moistens the body. The second shatters loneliness. So it's just kind of I thought it was quite relevant. And you probably know the Chinese Lu Tong, the famous Chinese tea drinker during the Tang Dynasty. That's what was referred to in the second part of the book. Yeah. How do you look exactly the same? You know in New Zealand who's Chinese?